Omonora, the Cloven Scourge, Omonora of the Midnight Order, Omonora, the chosen disciple of Savano. All of these titles belonged to a fallen woman who was once as ordinary as the snow that surrounded the mountaintops in her homeland. That was, however, before she discovered the Midnight Order and her savior, Savano, on the day that her parents died. It was a fitting ceremony for the former Marquis of Barenthal. The city guard and their captain were all present, as Haldir Famaris was quite close to Omenora's father, Garrick Vorganol. Her mother, Morgaine, had married into the notable title, but was still respected by the citizens to the utmost extent that someone of common birth could be, and yet none of that made a difference in death. Nora was 12 years old at the time that she watched the caskets of her beloved parents be lowered into the rectangular holes dug deep into the dirt. The time passed by in a jumbled mess. She didn't know how long she had listened to the guests speak about her family, how long she had stood there, back straight and stiff, as she silently observed the soil being tossed onto the large mahogany boxes. She could feel tears welling up in her eyes, but refused to let them fall. After what felt like an eternity, the holes for her parents' graves were filled in, and members of the procession began to quietly shuffle away. She cursed the fact that they all had something, someone, to return to. She had nothing, not anymore. The captain of the city guard, Haldir, was the last to leave. He didn't say anything to Nora as he walked by, but he gave her a firm squeeze on the shoulder that was probably all of the affection that he could manage. The orphaned girl forced a smile as they made eye contact. He was a nice enough man, if awkward and brutish, but he didn't understand how she felt right now. Barenthal was a quiet, uneventful city, and the threat of Haldir losing his loved ones to anything other than old age was minuscule. Only once everyone had left the burial grounds did Omonora collapse to her knees with a sob and a wail. The tears wouldn't cease, and if they continued, she was convinced that they would leave permanent trails on her cheeks. The girl hated herself even more for crying, but she couldn't stop. This continued late into the night, long after the sun had set, until all she could do was curl into a ball and tremble slightly from the exertion. Nora had no idea how long she had laid there on the ground when she began to feel sleep overtake her, the exhaustion from the day's events finally catching up to her. Maybe I should just close my eyes for a few minutes. When she next awoke, it was evident that more than a few minutes had passed. Her surroundings had also changed. Nora found herself sitting up in her large canopy bed, squinting at the bright sunlight coming through the windows, instead of standing in the cemetery watching her parents' funeral proceedings. Her parents, were they alive? Was that all just a bad dream? She had to know. Trying to squash the voice in her head that was saying she already knew the answer, she dared to hope and hurried out of her own chambers and into the bedroom at the end of the hall which belonged to her mother and father. Finding it empty, she continued her search through the rest of the mansion. When searching through every room yielded no results, she crumpled to her knees in the family library, holding her head in her hands. She felt the urge to start sobbing again well up in her throat. The emotion vanished when she realized that, if she was truly alone in her household, who had brought her home? A shiver ran down her spine at the implications of that thought. The overwhelming sadness was replaced by fear and slight panic. And yet, if someone really was here with her in her family's estate, she didn't want them to see how afraid she was. Trying to control the tone of her voice as best she could, Omonora spoke to the room before her. "If you are here with me right now, as I know you have been, show yourself." It didn't seem like anything would happen for a moment, and then all of the wall sconces were extinguished at once, swallowing her in complete darkness. She jumped a bit and turned around in an attempt to flee, but something stood in the way of where she knew the door was. It was a glowing, hulking silhouette of some massive, multi-armed creature with a white mask over where its face would be. He hurt to look at. Wait, he? As she continued to stare, transfixed, the young girl was more concerned about why her fear was ebbing away against her will, rather than the nature of the being before her. He did not speak, but appeared to observe her with a sentience similar to that of an intelligent, self-aware being. There was thought behind those eyes, not just an animal's instinct. She did not want to approach him, but the choice was made for her when the other entity disappeared and reappeared directly before her. The shock caused Nora to stumble backwards, tripping on a loose stone tile and falling onto her backside. What are you?" The words sounded weak and pitiful, and she cursed herself for them. He did not respond, instead simply offering one of his long, multi-jointed arms. With only a moment of hesitation, Nora placed her hand in his palm, trying to carefully avoid the long claws. When the two of them made contact, her consciousness shifted. The library and its walls dropped away from around her, and she felt like she was floating. It was as if all of her worldly emotions had disappeared entirely, only to be replaced by a sense of peace and calm. The feeling was not different to how she felt when surrounded by her parents' embrace. It made her want to cry, and she did. At this point, she had cried so much in one day that she was positive that the stains of her tears would remain. She sobbed and sobbed, but it was without the pain she had felt earlier. Omonora trembled and bawled as if she had discovered the meaning of life, the secrets of the universe. Without words, the being before her had shown her enlightenment. "Savannah." The name came to her without any prompting. He did not move, just continued to stare, but the mask tilted slightly to the side. She had heard of foreboding myths, cautionary tales in her father's ancient tomes. Never could she have expected that they were true. You have saved me." She let go of Savano's clawed hand and stared at her own. She did not understand why she had been chosen, but she understood that she had a purpose. She knew the truth now, and it was her duty to deliver it. They may not be able to comprehend what she had been shown, but she would try regardless to spread this knowledge to her people. Her thoughts shifted briefly to her parents. Morgane was a beautiful fawn woman who Nora had definitely inherited her physical appearance from, but she was boisterous and charismatic where her daughter was not. Garrick was an older elven man from whom his child inherited her love of life and all things alive. He was more quiet, reserved, but he had one goal as a Marquis of Barenthal: to make the snowy city they lived in prosper, never to go through hardship and strife again. Omonora now recognized that his goal could never have been made into reality, not with the world's races having such self-sabotaging tendencies. And yet, with the added element of enlightenment, they may have a chance. She had to try. She loved the world too much to let the cycle of prosper and ruin continue any longer. If she had the power to bring about change, permanent, unbelievable change, what did it matter if she had to make a sacrifice of her own? The girl had one thing left to do first, as a newly chosen disciple of the One Above. She had read about a test that she must pass to show her devotion to the Midnight Order. Her hand shook slightly as she moved to unclasp the small dagger from its holster on her right thigh. It was only natural, perhaps, to feel some hesitation about harming herself to benefit others, but it didn't stop her. Slowly, her gaze not leaving the deity before her, she raised the blade to be level with her face, the tip of the weapon pointing at herself. Omonora took one deep breath before, in a single, swift motion, she plunged the dagger into her eye. She screamed in agony as the pain rushed through her body, and she was swallowed by the unnatural darkness once more. No one heard the young girl's voice except her new patron.